Everybody's Matthew Brand here. If you grew up in the 90s like I did, there were some shows that you came across whether you wanted to or not. Even if you didn't like them or watch them, you were going to catch pieces of them because they're just that popular. One show for me like that was like Friends. If you know, everybody knows what Friends is, but I didn't really care for. I like Living Single, and especially Max and Kyle for whatever reason. I just thought they were hilarious. I thought all the people in Living Single were just way funnier than Friends. So I just never caught on to Friends, but I still caught pieces of it. I remember there's one episode I caught where I think the character Phoebe bites a guy on the butt while she's giving him a massage. Like that just stuck in my head. But I never remember anything. I don't know the dynamics between most of the characters. I learned over the years some of it, but it's not the show I was big familiar with. Another show that I was just catch pieces of would be Boy Meets World, and I never really watched the show. I just didn't enjoy it. I thought Topanga was cute when I was younger, but other than that, there was nothing for me to really latch on to. There were other shows I thought were better. Like I really liked Home Improvement. I really liked Home Improvement. I like Martin. I like shows like that, but I didn't really care much for Boys Meets World. Anyway, even though there was one clip of Boy Meets World, not a clip, but like a little scene from the movie or movie, sorry, TV show I saw when I was younger, and you could tell everything from the scene. That's why the writing in the 90s was so much better. You could tell everything from the scene, what the whole episode was about, and it still left a whole emotional impact. So what it seems like in the scene, just by the way it's telling, is Corey seems like he pulled a fire alarm, probably in the fire he started, because he's being held as a hero, but he doesn't really feel like a hero. And the way Mr. Feeney, who was his teacher and I think neighbor, and he sounds like the voice of reason, kind of like or wisdom, like Mr. Wilson was in Home Improvement. And it seems like he knows that something's not right with all the praise that Corey's getting, but he's hoping that Corey's the one that makes the right decision. You can tell all of this by their interactions. Now, in this, he he talks about, what is a hero? And he says, well, sometimes I think firemen can be heroes. And he said, and I knew, and Mr. Feeney says, I knew a man who worked in the factory for 30 years in a job he hated because he didn't have any other way to support his family. I thought he was a hero. That still makes me tear up now. That makes me hold back waterworks now because I know so many people who lived in that situation. But what makes it even sadder is I don't think those jobs like that exist anymore because that's what I considered a job when I was younger. A job was something that, hey, you know what? I don't like it. It's not great work, but it pays the bills. It's not skilled labor. It's not something that, you go and get a degree for, or you get pick up a trade. It's none of that. It doesn't pay great. It's not fantastic, but it pays the bills. It gives you money. It puts food on the table. I don't think those jobs exist anymore, which makes it even more heartbreaking because you have so many people who are going out and working themselves to death. They're missing out on time with their family. They're getting aches and pains, and not only that, but they still, their bills are like $3,000 a month. They're only getting 2,800. They're doing God knows what else to come up with that last 200, and it's sad. And it's not that they're sad or pathetic or anything like that. It's just that's the way the economy has rolled because it's so hard to go up in what did you call it? Be competitive because everything's owned by the same people. You're competing with the same few companies depending on where you live and where your industry is. Just so easy to get blacklisted. It's so easy to end up right back at the bottom. Even if you work your way up in the career, you're so easy to get right back at the bottom. So how do we handle this? I mean, yeah, if you're younger, you can just tell people, hey, live with your family longer, save up more, don't spend a lot of your money, do less with your money. If yeah, I get it. When you're young, you still feel like, hey, you don't know what tomorrow will bring. You still should live life a little. And that's true. When I was younger, we didn't have much money and we would have to end up pitching in. There's a Jets Pizza by my dad's place in Warren, and we used to walk over there and all pitch in a couple of bucks so we could get get the Just Pizza. Find people to pitch in with so it's not as expensive. And you don't always have to take grand vacations. Take a picnic or something, go, find cheaper ways to travel or something like that. Don't travel as far. You don't have to go to Rome. There's people who still have not gone on vacations. There's a video I saw recently where a woman was like, it's normal. I think she was saying a bunch of normal stuff. She sounded like she had a Hispanic accent, but she was saying it's normal to have mismatched furniture. It's normal to not go on vacation every year. It's normal to not, have a brand new car. It's normal. Like, it's okay. It's okay to not have the best of the best and save it for later. But that's for the younger people. But what about the older people who, yeah, they got trapped in this system and maybe they did go to college. Maybe they did, work really hard, work a couple of jobs, save up, and then life still threw them some bad dice or they still drew some bad cards. What do you do when you're in that position now where it's like, okay, I'm already wrapped up in bills and on how to save? Well, I would say start putting your eggs in different baskets. Every now and then you do spend. Everybody does because they have to, just to keep their sanity. So in the midst of your spending, get by, start developing and training different skills in the free time that you have. Yeah, maybe you had to put down, video games, or maybe you had to put down a certain section of social time, and then map out, time out the different social times you have or the different time frames you need to work on stuff. For example, if you have a very long, let's say you have a list of things and that you want to get done, map that out time wise, schedule it detailed. I'm going to spend 2 hours getting this done, 2 hours getting that done, 2 hours getting that done. And it sounds like, oh, I had to be so extremely organized. But you notice, like, when I had quite a bit of money, I had more time. Well, I didn't have start off with quite a bit of money, but like when I was working way more trying to get money, I actually had more time because I forced myself to schedule it out. When I first started working like way too much, I was probably, I want to say 21. I want to say 21 to 22, and I was working an extreme amount. I was probably like doing like 20-hour days. I'm a chef, so I was working as a chef in the daytime, and I might not even been a chef. Yeah, I might just been a cook, but at some point I became a chef. But I was working as a cooking in the daytime and baking at night, and I had like 3 hours of sleep in between hand. And there was a point, and I remember when I was sitting, where was I, in the break room or something? I was sitting down, and my friend came up to say something to me, and I was like, "Stop! Leave my fruity pebbles alone, Barney." Like I was really hallucinating about like Fred Flintstone and Barney and Fruity Pebbles. Like it was not healthy. And even though I still worked the same amount, if not more, I actually was able to restructure that to get more time to myself by just taking 2 consecutive days off and scheduling everything in those 2 days. So what happened was what was it? It was a couple days a week. It wasn't the weekend, so it was a couple days a week. And if I did take those 2 consistent days off, what happened was I was able to schedule everything throughout the day. And I was just thinking that the other day because I went and saw the new Spider-Man movie. And after I saw the Spider-Man movie, I was thinking, I told my friend I don't like really going to movies anymore because it eats up so much time. It's like 2, 3, 4 hours of your day. You have to drive to the movies, you have to drive back. That's like an hour, especially if there's traffic. Then you have the credits, the opening credits, depending on what movie theater you go to, it's like, thank you for coming to here, or if it's, MJR, everybody does the clap or whatever, the previews, the what's coming up next, and then you wait for the end credit scene. I mean, it takes hours in the movie, and it's like you sit there thinking after you get out or before you go in, I could have that many hours in a day. There's so many other things I could do, but at the same time, you don't want to neglect your life and not do anything, or neglect, the people you want to spend time with and not do anything. So it becomes like, man, I really, you force yourself to kind of do it and you feel regrettable about it. However, back when I had that work schedule, when I was working way more, I saw movies way more often. And it was because it was planned out. It was like, okay, we're going to do this every Tuesday at what was it? It was every Tuesday. I want to say it was either in the evening or we called it matinee. So we either did a Tuesday evening, or because I'm cheap, we probably did a Tuesday matinee movie. And it wasn't even cherry pickers. We would just see a movie every week on Tuesday. And I knew that 4 hours of the day was reserved for movie time. I knew 2 hours, whatever hours that wasn't reserved for the movies, the that the other opposite three or whatever hours was reserved for private time with my fiance. So me and my fiance, we would have our private time, quote unquote, and then the opposite, if it was the morning, we would have the 3 hours of the movies. The middle of all of that was spent on my private business that I was working on at the time, because even though I was spending all those days, the 20 hours a day, working on my regular jobs, like they're not 9 to 5. It was just, but you get my point. They're like my actual, jobs where I was employed. I was trying to start up something for myself, so I spent the middle of the day. I spent 4 hours or 5 or 6 or whatever working on that. Usually, it turned into a little bit more because, of course, nothing ever goes right on the computer. There's always some hang up. So I spent more time working on that, and then that was on one day, and then the same thing with the next day. On the next day, it would be we would go on like an adventure or something. Like we'd go down to Ann Arbor and walk around, or we would go to Plymouth or something and have a picnic. So we'd go out or something like that, and then that would be our like private date for the day, or go to a fancy restaurant or something. So that's what we would do the next day, and then again, I would spend the rest of the day like working on you know, my business and stuff like that. So I spent more time working, but I got more quality time out of it because it was planned out. It's just some people don't really feel like it's romantic to plan this specific thing at this specific time. But what I will say is maybe don't plan that specific thing. You just plan that this is us time, and nothing else comes in the way of us time, or this is my social time and nothing comes in the way of that social time. So now that you feel like you've gotten it done and over with, you can completely focus on the other things you need to get done. This is my time for chores. This is my time to clean up the house. This is my time to do yard work. This is my time to work on the car. And this is my time to work on my business. And you'll find that instead of just feeling overwhelmed, at least you've exited everything out, and you really just get to focus on that thing, and you get a lot more done than when everything just feels absolutely overwhelmed. Because a lot of people, they'll tell you to, like, oh, just work yourself. You need to put in 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours. You know, you need to outwork everybody. And it's sometimes it is yeah, you do have to work more than the average bear, but you also should work smarter, not harder. And even very successful people, they realize that it's way better to work healthy, because if you work, the healthier you work, even though, trust me, 20, look, I look older than I am. 20 hours a day is not healthy. I'm gonna be honest. 20 hours a day is not healthy. But I'm just saying, if you do work healthier, you will accomplish more in a shorter amount of time than if you work, nonstop, and then you're always working in a state of exhaustion. And I think some people, they say stuff like that because they they may have sacrificed something that they shouldn't have to get the success that they have, or maybe the success isn't as in the stage they look for. And I don't mean to call anybody out, because it's none of my business. It's not my business. But I will say there was one particular entertainer who gives a lot of success advice, and I'd say he's about my complexion. And what I will say is, what he did was he got himself in a tax situation. Now, sometimes these tax situations, especially when I don't judge people on the tax situations, because I do know that sometimes when you get higher up, you get targeted for certain stuff and get taken advantage of. I think we've all heard it. It just depends on which side you believe. Sometimes people will say, like, "Hey, my tax, lawyer or agent or attorney or whatever, or what do you call that thing? The accountant or whatever. Hey, that person screwed me over. I'm willing to believe in them favorably. I'm not saying they didn't, but this person also was working themselves to death for years, and they're saying that's what you have to do for success. That's what you have to do for success. That's what you. And I'm not saying they didn't, but this person also already had a platform, and two. It's not that this was creating success for them, is that if they did not do it, they were probably going to go to prison. And they're very scared about going to prison. And I understand being, doing what you have to do. I understand that. But that's because it's a temporary, very unhealthy situation that you have to deal with. That's better than the alternative. However, if you can work healthier, it will work longer, it will work better, and it will go better for you. But the we're talking the difference between people who are already up there in business and making the most of a bad situation, and people who are trying to get ahead. Working your if you're not at the top already, if you're not like already up there, you have a long road ahead of you, and it'll work better if you pace yourself. But part of pacing yourself is counting your paces. That's why in the army they go, your mama was home when you left. You're right. Is because you're pacing yourself. You're walking. You're going with a cadence, and that includes timing things out. So yeah, map that out. That's my best advice for people who are already, you know, getting. I don't want to say getting up. They're already wrapped up in bills, but feeling like they're behind financially. That's my best advice. So, hey, again, this is a journey. This is not me being a financial guru. I'm trying to take this journey with you guys. So if you want to come along for the journey, hopefully things get better and better as we go. But please subscribe, and if you want to support the journey, give a like, a comment, and perhaps even a share if it's something you think that's good. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. Peace out.